And it's a very good afternoon to the Sportsfan Radio panel. Plenty happening in sport. Good to see Dan Butterly back after a sojourn down into Disneyland. We might start with you, though, Cooter. There's big things happening at Wimbledon tonight, although there's a lot happening for Australian tennis there. Probably the best tournament that we've had for quite some time.
Yeah, we've just got a bit of repeat there. But, yeah, wasn't it a fantastic Saturday evening, Sunday morning Australian time to watch Ash, well, they kept referring to her as Ashley Barty, but Ash Barty, world number one, win her second Grand Slam in Wimbledon and following the footsteps of Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley.
Yes, 50th anniversary of Yvonne Goolagong's first win and 41 years since her second win. So a great victory for her.
Yep.
And 10 years after she won the girls' title at Wimbledon, Cooter.
Yeah, and if you see the picture, there's a picture of Ash floating around as that girl 10 years ago, and there's actually not much has changed with Ash, I would have thought. One of the things you've got to appreciate with her is, apart from the fact that she's a bloody good tennis player, is her appreciation for the history of the game, which we probably don't give enough credit to. You listen to the way she spoke last night, and after she played a good game last night. She had a chance to serve it in the second set. Probably played a loose game, got broken and then dropped the tiebreaker. But at the end of the day, she was good enough to win the third set. And I think everyone felt pretty comfortable that she would win it once she broke early. And in her post-match interview, one of the first questions was, do you remember the last point? And she said, I can't remember it. I actually cannot remember it. And she did the Pat Cash celebration as well and walked up into the stands. And they've actually, since that Pat Cash climbed the stands, they've actually put a door in or a little gate in so that you don't have to quite jump on top of the press box there. But she unites a nation, Ash Barty. If we're on Twitter last night and social media, absolutely united a nation. And she could have had a crack at the fans last night, the English supporters. They certainly didn't show too much love, but I suspect it was more that they wanted to see a fair contest. And the way it started with her winning the first 14 points last night, though, thought it might have been a bagel.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Cooter. Did she early in her career used to have Nana in the stands for every match?
Yes.
Yeah, Nana would be very proud today up there in the tennis court in the sky.
Yeah, I think the other thing, Paul, is that we've been very critical of last year that she didn't play any Grand Slams. Now, we're not critical of her. We're very critical of the fact that she didn't play because she couldn't get her coach into Queensland. So if we look back on that, Craig Tyser, her coach, who's she referred to him last night as the captain, wasn't able to get into Queensland to coach her last year at all, and they did a lot via Zoom. Whereas this year, obviously, they made the commitment to travel overseas. And I think, from memory, last night she mentioned that they'd be away from family for 8 to 9 months, which is a huge commitment from everyone of her team. But no, she's the most humble winner. And I think she's done one. She said that she hopes she's done Yvonne Goolagong-Cawley proud. But I suspect she's done the whole nation very proud after the last fortnight.
Very nicely done. She did speak very well afterwards. Not much from the opponent, just tears, Jana Novotná style. But I thought she spoke very well, actually.
She's always spoken very well. She's always, and it's just this humbleness about her. The first person she thanked last night, or she said, was her opponent immediately. And you look at the other press conferences she does, and she did the same about the fact that her semi-final against Kerber, which was an absolute belter, that the opponent brought the best out of her. She had to lift. And, it's always about everyone else but Ash. And she's just, she's the most marketable Australian at the moment, you would have thought. and we'll probably talk about it later, Professor, but if the first phone call this morning from Craig Tiley wasn't to Dan Andrews, I don't know what it would have been.
Can I say I agree with you about the humility and also the respect for opponents. Interesting, John Newcomb was featured during the week, and they talked about why he jumped the net after he won his Wimbledons, and he said it was to make sure that the guy at the other end didn't feel like a stale bottle of P1SS at the end of the game. He said it was always remarkable to me that these days the winner takes all the glory and the loser sort of skulks off into anonymity, despite the fact that they are the two warriors that have entertained the crowd. And I just get the impression with Barty, she's very much the same. It's a contest between the two of them.
Yeah, totally.
The humility might come from mum and dad were interviewed, said they didn't think she was much chop when she was younger. So it's not like these tennis parents that ship them off to Nick Bollettieri, whatever his name is, in Florida. My daughter's going to win Wimbledon.
No.
So she must have come from humble upbringings. The parents didn't even think she was much chop.
No, and I think again we're talking about the world number one, and there were still people that didn't give her enough credit for being world number one and didn't think that she was the world number one. Hopefully this has shut them up, but at the end of the day, I don't think she cares if she's number one in the world. She's playing what she loves, and she's doing a bloody good job of playing that game.
Kuda, she's playing well on grass and also on the French clay, which is unusual, and no doubt the Australian hard court, like the American hard court, without getting too ahead of ourselves, is she potentially a career Grand Slam?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a one-year Grand Slam, but a career Grand Slam winner.
Yeah, no, totally. We've discussed it before with Ash, is the fact that she's won Grand Slam doubles. Her doubles is unbelievable with Sam Stosur, and she can volley. So last night didn't really need to, but she's got this amazing slice backhand that seems to play well on most surfaces. So could she win a Grand Slam, like all four tournaments at some stage of her career? Certainly. She was going along pretty well at the French Open recently, Judge, until she succumbed to injury. The hip injury, and even to get over that has been an amazing.
It also, I just love to see it because she's a single-handed, and I've always been a fan of Federer, and and it's just more elegant, and I just wonder whether that type of style is now coming back more, because I got to tell you, I'm over the double-handed, even the double-handed forehand now we're seeing.
Yeah, so she's a double-handed backhand, Ash. Yep. So for the topspin, she is a double-handed backhand. But the slice backhand last night.
That's right. The slice is coming. It's a real part of her game, the slice. Yeah. And you noticed last night, and I think this is something that the commentator, and we should congratulate the commentary last night. Todd Woodbridge and Elena Dokic we loved Australian commentary, but they were brilliant last night. There were spaces there where they just let the crowd or the tennis tell the story, and then they actually said how Ash got back into the match. And that she did change a couple of things up. It was insightful. But, yeah, her slice backhand, she uses it for a couple of reasons. But at times, poor Pliskova tried to hit the slice backhand as well. And she just had no idea, unfortunately.
So the commentary wasn't like what you see in the State of Origin, which is so pro-New South Wales, it's unbelievable.
No, last night was pretty good, and the fact that obviously we had an Australian in the final helped, but they were very pro Ash, let's be honest, but at the same time gave a lot of credit to Pliskova and that they knew that she would come back. They knew that even though she'd lost the first 14 points, that there would come a stage where she would get into the match and that Ash had to put her away. So, no, it was good to listen to. And Todd obviously is a class performer. We've seen that over the years. So they thought the same as well. But no, I thought all up last night was a cracking night. Obviously, the other thing, Professor, was that Dylan Alcott won the quads last night. Unfortunately, you had to watch that on Stan, which, again, blown away by that. So he won his Grand Slam. I think that's now, I'm just guessing at this, is that 17 he's won now?
Not sure.
Not sure how many, Cooter, but that's 3 crowns for this year. So he's got the Australian and the French, the Olympic and the US to go. No reason why he couldn't do that as well. And a new term. I didn't realise there was such a thing as a golden slam.
Golden slam, yeah.
Yeah, there is. And I could the is Djokovic isn't going to the Olympics, is he? I can't remember if he's pulled out or not.
I think he's hosting the nightclub facilities there.
Well, he would have a real problem, wouldn't he? Because he'll probably win tonight, and then he'll celebrate with everyone. And then if he did, he'd have to go to quarantine probably. So, and he's one of these that says trust me, but I'm not sure we can trust him.
I've got to focus a bit on him because it takes the heat off the rugby league players who haven't had a great week again.
Yeah, no, trust me, we're going to come to you shortly. So
yeah, the line might cut out then.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah. The other thing, Professor, last night was that Australian John Pearce played in the mixed doubles semi-final with his Chinese partner, and they lost 7-5 in the third, and that was in the semi-final. So John couldn't quite get the job done, 7-5 in the third. But a terrific tournament. Hopefully that leads on to the Olympics for John playing doubles with the Demon.
Is that why you got the sunnies on? You're up till about 6 a.m. watching that thrilling.
Yeah, it was about 3:30 that eventually sort of crawled into bed and
fair's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and then up here at being on the executive committee at East Ringwood Junior Footy Club meant that a 9 o'clock arrival or 8 o'clock arrival here. I was up at 7 o'clock this morning. So the things we do for sport.
Well, at 3:30 a.m. that's when those esports boys, they're just getting fired up.
Yeah, I did think of them, and certainly thought that I would have been able to smash a couple of Gravitas glories last night to celebrate with, because I would have woken up cherry ripe, Paul. So. Yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, Professor, we're privileged to have Ash Barty as an Australian, privileged to have her back playing tennis. And I mentioned, and I haven't had it confirmed, but I hope that Vegemite's still a sponsor of her, because if they're not, what an opportunity missed for them.
Absolutely.
She previously had Vegemite on her top. And last night I couldn't see it apart from the big Jaguar sponsorship and some other sponsorships. So and as I said, the Australian Open, we know that at the moment sporting events in Melbourne are struggling to go ahead. Craig Tiley this week said that he hopes the Australian Open will go ahead. The players have already said they won't do the 14-day quarantine that they did last year, or this year, sorry. He will be doing everything within his powers to get the Australian Open going ahead, because he's got the 2 most marketable players that Australia's had in a long time in Ash Barty, the world number 1.
And Dylan Alcott.
Let's go 3 then, sorry. Dylan Alcott. And the other player that absolutely will pack every stand out in Nick Kyrgios.
Hey, David, quick question for you, David. U.S. Open coming up as well.
Yep.
Naomi Osaka, does she play the U.S. Open, or does she continue to sit out?
Well, overnight I noticed that she's made some comments around the press and the like. Unfortunately, haven't caught up on those as yet. But Dan, if there's any media that you'd want to try and avoid, if that's the problem, I would have thought it's the U.S. Open. So I hope she does play, because at the end of the day, she's an outstanding player. She's the defending champion, I think, off the top of my head, of the US Open.
Yep.
And you'd be disappointed not to see it. But at the end of the day, the mental health of the player has to come first. But yeah, let's hope that does improve, or there's method behind her getting better and being able to fulfill her talent as an amazing tennis player, but also I think as a person.
No, it'd definitely be a lot more interesting if she's playing and Serena's playing and Ash is playing. It'd be a much better U.S. Open.
And we talked about last week, Dan, the mixed doubles pairing of Nick Kyrgios and Venus Williams. Again, packed out the stands. It was quite good to watch.
Can I just make an interesting observation that Barty's now won 12 tournaments, or this will be 13 tournaments. Yvonne Goolagong won 84. Margaret Court won 192 singles titles. It is just extraordinary. We talk about her Grand Slam record, her career, and Goolagong's is incredible. And it won't get, no player now will get near those titles.
No, and I think the other thing is that if you look at the competition at the moment, it's so even. Like, yes, Ash is world number one, but the semi-final went to 3. Both semi-finals went to 3, and then the final goes to 3 sets.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's not like the men's at the moment, which is sort of, well, it really is still the big four if you want to discuss that. I think that, and we've talked about women's golf before as being more watchable than the men's golf because they hit the distances we do. I think women's tennis is becoming like that because you just don't know who's going to win on the day.
Just on the big 4, do you think Roger's about to pack up his rackets and fondue set and head home?
It's Paul, if we were discussing last Sunday and talking about if we were going to say he would lose in straight sets and get done 6-love, we would have probably been committed to a home.
Well, that's where I'm dialing in from. But, That'd be a good trivia question is to name the rooster that beat him 6-love and spell his surname as well. Wouldn't be bad. That's for a bonus point.
And spell his surname. And even then, he played a cracking match as well. So the young kids, they're starting to get the young kids coming through. And Roger on grass has been a warrior, but he did look old the other night, unfortunately. And you hope it's not the way that he finishes. You hope, but could you see him going around again next year?
No.
All right, no. Kuda, men's singles tonight. Djokovic, number 1 seed against Matteo Berrettini, the number 7 seed.
Yes, Professor, and what we're going to do as well, we adopted when Leighton Hewitt was going out with Kim Clijsters, we adopted her as Aussie Kim, and we'll be adopting this guy as Aussie Mario because he's currently dating Aussie Anna Tomljanovic. So he'll be an Aussie for the night, and I think that everyone will be cheering their Chaminda Vases off for him.
He's paying about $18. I'll adopt him if he wins.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's hope he does win because honestly,
there's more chance of tomorrow being Tuesday.
Well, it will be. If you said that when the match ends, it will be. But unfortunately, I think Professor tonight it will be. It'll be 4 sets, and it will go the way of Djokovic, and he has every chance of winning a Grand Slam. I think Judge would agree. He's probably the best defensive player that we've seen in the game, and it's
extraordinary, Treater. But,
not winning ugly is that style? Is it winning ugly?
Well, he's never out of a point.
Yeah, and he's just not mocked, but by the public or the media. But he is an amazing tennis player, and I think he could get 30 Grand Slam titles because the other 2 are going to retire. He's as chirpy now as he was 5 years ago, and I see another 5 years in him.
Yeah, and overnight the Friday night match that he played was probably one of the more tighter ones if you're going to look at it. 7-6, 7-5, 7-5. So it wasn't total domination, but to win in straight sets is pretty impressive. And then the other semi, obviously, we saw the other night. We saw one of the young Canadians, Shapovalov, and he was absolutely distraught after losing. But at the end of the day, he's just a young kid who's got plenty of time in front of him.
I think with Djokovic, he's very similar to the Ronaldo, the Coke Dodger, my body's a temple style, so that there's no reason. Apparently his commitment and his dedication to training, which we all wish Kyrgios had, is just going to make him play for at least 5 more years at that level, because he just obsessed with training and his devotion to that side of it, which we wish, again, that Kyrgios, if he could follow that, there'd be Grand Slams on his CV.
Yeah, but Nick Kyrgios this last week has said that that's not him. And we've just got to not respect it at the end of the day, but just go, well, he's made up of different metal or different makeup than what Djokovic is, and at the end of the day, you can't
force someone to have that devotion. That's the thing.
But Cooter, I'll put this to you. During the week, Kyrgios talked about why he wouldn't be playing at the Olympics. Now, the main reason, as I understand it, or the only reason he's not playing, is because of the abdominal injury that forced him out at Wimbledon. But he managed to give an offside saying, well, playing without spectators doesn't feel right. Now, the press, in their infinite wisdom, have jumped all over that, saying he's not playing because there's no crowds. In reality, he's not playing because he's injured.
He's not playing because he's injured and wanted to give someone else that was fully fit a go. The fact he made the comment about no crowds was just one part of that entire press conference. So again, let's latch onto the sensationalism of it. And then even further now, Professor, we've gone that he should have to. There should be a HEC system in place for anyone that has funding from the OAS or the Australian government. That's where we've gone. So the fact he's injured seems to be a bypass. Just seems to be something just like he's not playing because he's not injured. He's not playing because there's no crowds and he can't get lifted for no crowds.
Yeah, it's a sad when it gets to that. Dan, sorry, go on.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's what Kyrgios, and you can understand at times why he just has this prickly relationship with the media because of what they'll focus on rather than the good, which he had an amazing Wimbledon. And as we've said before on this, is that he's the first name that people will try and get to play tournaments because he will sell crowds.
And I think it's a total indictment on tennis, to be honest, Cooter. He'll never win a Grand Slam with his attitude because he cannot get through 5 set matches.
Correct. And doesn't want to.
He's a sideshow. Whereas the other guys are the real deal, I reckon.
He doesn't mind abusing his box either. Doesn't mind a bit of aggro at the box.
And Professor, while we're on this, his missus has received an exemption to travel to the Bahamas to be with Nick while he's in recuperating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not watching L2, you know, Cooter.
So
you have to wash your own hair though, like Bernie's last.
Well, you just sit back and you just go, well, Ash's parents obviously couldn't go over there to watch and watch their daughter put on a clinic. But anyway, let's move forward and be positive on the show today.
Let's stay on the positive. And the positive for you, Dan, is this a resurgence in US tennis because the boys' final tonight will be an all-US affair between Samir Banerjee from New Jersey and Victor Lilov. Where are they coming from?
That's a good question. New Jersey, I guess, in that respect. It's you don't hear of these names. You don't see a resurgence in U.S. tennis. I mean, we talked about this weeks ago. It's just still you don't. I drive by every day, and I obviously live out here in California. The weather's beautiful every day. You don't see people playing tennis. I see more people playing pickleball than I do playing tennis in the United States, and it just I don't see the youth playing it. I don't see the high school level playing it. I just don't know where that resurgence is going to come. I mean, it's hate to say it's a fluke. I hope it's not, but it just seems like it's maybe it's the grass surface that's allowed them to get to where they're at tonight.
It's an interesting one, Dan, because your college tennis system, and you know better than me, is that a lot of Australians make the trek over to America to attend college on the back of tennis.
Absolutely, David. There's no doubt about it. When you look at collegiate tennis and you look at the players, the rosters, there's a lot of players that are from foreign countries, not the United States, coming over here. Exactly what you said, because they're good at tennis. That's where coaches recruit, and it's a free college education here in the States for a lot of foreign players.
All right. Plenty for tennis. That's a happening thing at the moment. Now, Dan, we'll stay with you because NBA finals are within their last 2 or 3 games. The Phoenix Suns and the Milwaukee Bucks, 2 small market teams. The Suns currently leading 2-0 in the best of 7 series. Now they've 2 games on the Bucks home court. How have you seen it so far?
Well, the Phoenix Suns are pretty much dominating the mark so far. I mean, the starting 5 for Phoenix they're just taking over. 3 of them scored over 20, 22, 25 points in game 2. And you look at, even game 1, 22, 32, 27 points. I mean, they're just dominating the Milwaukee Bucks at this point. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Milwaukee's struggling with some injuries. They are going to be home, but there's been a lot of discussion now. Can Phoenix just go 4-0 and close it out? I still think Milwaukee will get at least 1. But the way Phoenix is playing right now and the leadership of Chris Paul, they are definitely dominating the Milwaukee Bucks.
Isn't that's one of the interesting? You just mentioned his name, then Dan, is Chris Paul. He hasn't played in a final series before, but he just looks such a natural for the big stage, and he's not the sideshow, but he's sort of the third banana if you look at the team and you go, well, Ayton in the middle has been huge, both rebounding and point scoring and output. Booker could be anything.
Yep.
We're only saying spurts. Bridges has been, I think, one of the finds of the year. And then they're getting points from players like Crowder and I'm missing one here because there's another kid that they've got who's just put some points up. And then Chris Paul's dishing out is really, he's like the maestro with the orchestra. He's just directing everything.
Well, that's it. We talked about this a few weeks ago too. I mean, Phoenix is really, 2-3 years ago, they were one of the worst teams in the NBA. And they've done an unbelievably great job of drafting solid players, DeAndre Ayton being one of them. That's really just helped them build around him and bringing in Chris Paul with their leadership. I mean, Chris is the steady hand, as you said, David, getting the ball to who he needs to get it to, the hot hand at the moment. And obviously Chris is also scoring, which has been great as well. So he's not just dishing it, he's also throwing it through the hoop. But it's been fun to watch. I mean, it's a lot of players that you may not know as well as if you're following the Lakers or you're following the Knicks or following some of the bigger teams. But the Suns versus the Bucks, it'll be interesting to see how the overall ratings are for this series, but it's been very entertaining to watch.
And I was going to ask you that, is the fact that these two aren't mainstream teams. They're not the Los Angeles, as you said, or New York or those sorts of teams. But from an Australian's perspective, we might be different, is that I think we're loving it more than not seeing a LeBron and AD. We're watching a team that's actually been developed from the draft and some building bricks brought in to support those players. That's what we're used to here. And I think from a competition perspective, it's been amazing to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're not the heavy market teams, the teams that have the big dollars to go out and buy a bunch of free agents like a LeBron James, Paul George, those type of players. They've done it through the draft and kept the players as well. That's one of the things you can say about Milwaukee. You look at that roster from Milwaukee, Giannis and those guys, they drafted, they kept those players. So it's fortunate because they're both great cities. I mean, Phoenix and Milwaukee are great places to live, great people in both markets. And it's fortunate that this year they're getting the success that they are.
Dan, you mentioned Chris Paul, 36 years old. He's turning back the clock, obviously. Is he in almost career best form and certainly playoff career best form?
Yeah, he's been a great player in the NBA. He's been one of those guys that, you'll hear sometimes talk about Hall of Fame credentials. A lot of success. He's got a lot of marketing ability out here in the States as well. But I think he is having his best playoffs of his career. I mean, he's been around some very good players, but a lot of times you'll hear guys like Dwayne Wayne or those type of players that have had more success in the finals. So I think that's one of the things that Chris is having. He's got the players around him. He's got balance. He's able to dish it and do the things he needs to do to have the success that he's having. And I think he's just relaxed and playing his best basketball of his career.
Well, surely that shows that a team can take a gamble on a 36-year-old and improve.
Absolutely. When you, as we were saying, if you've got a very young nucleus of players, very young squad, you need to have somebody that knows how to play and win in the NBA. Chris Paul can do that, and he has been that steadying force. Obviously, just an MVP level for the playoffs this year. I'll be surprised if he doesn't get the MVP. But I just think he's been that quarterback, that steadying force, that assistant coach on the floor in many ways for this young team.
And how much do you think the knee injury that Giannis is carrying is affecting how the Bucks are playing?
I think it affects them a little bit, Mark, but I'll tell you, Phoenix has come in here hot. I mean, you look at the teams that they beat in the playoffs and the way they beat them. I mean, they have been probably the best team coming into the playoffs. So it is, I think it does affect Milwaukee a little bit. They're not as deep with those injuries, but give all the credit to the Phoenix Suns. They're just playing well above their pay grade, as they would say if you compare salaries. So
Dan, one of the players I think's been disappointing so far in the final series for Milwaukee has definitely been Chris Middleton, who's on a massive, and we shouldn't always equate everything with salaries, but he's on a massive salary at Milwaukee, and bang for buck, he's actually failing to deliver. Well, if you talk about Giannis was amazing in game 2. His start got them going, but they just did not make shots. And I said to my brother, the athleticism of Giannis is just, he ran the ball down at one stage and then dunked it, and you have to watch it again because it was that quick.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I mean, Middleton, he scored 29 points. He shot 26 shots. So you're scoring as much as you're throwing shots up there. I mean, doing everything he can from the small forward position to score because obviously the Milwaukee bench is not providing much depth at all. I mean, they had, if I'm totaling it up here, 22 points off the bench out of the 105 that they scored. So again, neither bench is out there lighting it up for either team. The starters are really doing the job, and again, you just look at the balance in the previous game. I mean, Ayton's 22, Chris Paul 32, Booker 27. I mean, they're doing what they need to do with some good balance to get it done.
And Dan, the one of the interesting stats in the first half was the number of points in the paint compared to the 3-point shots. I think at one stage it was 22 points in the paint to 0, but they were only down by 2 points to Phoenix Suns.
Exactly.
All right, Dan, can you give us a prediction? Will it be a 4-0 sweep?
I don't think it'll be a 4-0 sweep, Mark, but I think the Phoenix Suns are ultimately going to win this. It could be 4-1. I just think Milwaukee will sneak one at home, whether it's the third game 3 tomorrow, or game 4, middle of the week. But I just think that Phoenix is just playing so doggone well, and Milwaukee struggling with the injuries just a bit.
Just before we move on, Dan, the two coaches, I had to look them up. Monty Williams and Mike Budenholzer. Not two of the names that flash across when you're talking about all-time great coaches in the NBA.
So they don't sound similar to Phil Jackson and Pat Riley, is what you're saying, Mark, in that respect. So, but yeah, again, it's one that credit to both these organizations. They didn't have to go with the big name coach. They found the right coach for the players that they've got and worked the system around that coaching style. And this is, we've talked about this over the years on this show. I mean, a coach gets fired and he gets hired the next year. I mean, the recycling of head coaches. This is again another breath of fresh air to give some guys a chance, and they're proving that they can be successful.
Well, and sorry, Professor Monty Williams, I think, coached Chris Paul 10 years ago, and was a massive reason for Chris Paul being at the Phoenix Suns. So the interesting thing, Dan, was that I'm trying to think the coach, but he was listed as the interim head coach, and he coached the rest of the season out as the interim head coach, and potentially could have won the whole series. But it was just an odd naming, wasn't it?
Was that Nate McMillan that you're thinking of?
Thank you. That's exactly the one I was thinking of.
That was. I mean, he was coaching down in Atlanta and doing a great job, obviously, down there with the playoffs. And I actually had Atlanta as one of the hottest teams out there. So,
All right, Dan.
But
Thanks for that.
but hopefully Bud can have a shave and at least look like a head coach as well, instead of someone that looks like they might have smashed a few Gravitas glories.
Well, it's a good segue, Cooter, because I've just had a message from Sean Callanan. The beer campaign for placing orders closes tonight. So anybody who's watching who wants to smash down a Gravitas Glory at some stage can go to gravitas.gg/beer. Now, the Sports Geek keeps a watch on everything that's happening on that website. He tells me that Paul Dalligan's yet to jump on and place an order. What's going on there, Paul?
Oh, no, I'll come in late. I'm waiting for the free lanyard offer to clear some of the last stock there, because that's what's missing in my life is an esports lanyard. So I'll jump on and buy some smashable beers. I'll do that for our man. So I saw his fundraising efforts are going pretty well there. So,
well, as I said, over 50 people subscribe. So that just shows the power of social media.
You might be able to refurbish the dungeon. I'll tell you what, the way he's going.
Or that people in lockdown need to have some hobby. So,
or drink beer. One of the two.
Well, certainly, I would have thought they both go hand in hand, don't they? If you're, I would have thought, literally, Paul.
You're on fire today, Cootie. You've had about as much sleep as Tiger Woods in his prime. You're on fire.
I haven't used any of what Tiger had though, so I should be right to get through this.
There's a link to Jai Arrow somewhere with Tiger Woods. I'm just trying to work it out for you, Professor, but I'm sure I'll conjure it up.
Thanks, mate. All right, Judge. The Olympics is less than 2 weeks away. There was a suggestion by Paddy Mills' mother that he be allowed to also carry the Aboriginal flag into the stadium, given that he's carrying the Australian flag. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, lovely idea, Professor. Won't happen, shouldn't happen, in my opinion. The Aboriginal flag, just so we're clear, it's not the Aboriginal flag. What it is, it's a copyrighted piece of work owned by Harold Thomas, who's an Aboriginal activist, which has been embraced by the Aboriginal community, but it doesn't have official recognition, although governments love to put them on the front of their buildings and get all the kudos and all the gravitas that it brings. But in reality, it's not the Aboriginal flag.
Pardon?
It's not there is no such thing as the national Aboriginal flag. I think it was wonderful, for instance, Kathy Freeman carried it around at the Commonwealth Games, but that's a personal achievement, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic for her because she's clearly proud of her Aboriginal heritage. But you can't have it as saying this is the Australian flag or some sort of recognised flag, because if he does that, he's got to have the Torres Strait Island flag as well. And I think it becomes an impossible situation for Paddy, and then he's going to be embroiled in controversy, which he shouldn't, because it sounds to me like a great scout, Paddy Mills. And I think the personal honour is him carrying the flag, but I think it's too controversial and, in fact, politically incorrect in the correct sense, as in the politics of it is that is not the Australian flag, and he can't. But you guys might have a different view. That's what I think about it.
Judge, let me put this question to you then, because I appreciate your thoughts on that question I first asked you. If we're then going to have a flag that represents all, should we give serious consideration to changing the flag?
Great question. Absolutely, Professor. Look, it's again, it's like the Australian Constitution. It was great for 1901. I think it doesn't work now. The way modern life has gone, it might have been terrific back in 1901 to pay homage to the British Crown and the British institutions, but for God's sake, we're 120 years past that, and I know that our country wasn't wrought by revolution like Dan's was, but really we are big enough to stand on our own 2 feet now. We've stuffed up the whole Republican argument, but the flag's a different argument, and I just don't think it represents ourselves. So, yeah, I think it's a great time. I just don't know when the opportunity is actually going to arise. So I think we'll stick with it, but I think we should because it doesn't represent us.
Let's change it today because they're focused on a football match over there, so they might not even notice. If we rip the Union Jack off and they wake up, they wouldn't even notice. They're getting tattoos if they've already won it over there.
I couldn't care. You're right. They'll be drunk for a year, so they go unnoticed.
And of course, they'll be singing that wonderful, catchy tune. It's coming home.
Coming home.
Yeah. What a bunch of dribblers. But anyway, the flag though, like I think hasn't the honour of Paddy Mills won actually carrying the flag and carrying it because he's without doubt one of our, when we talk ambassadors on this show, he's one of the great ambassadors for Australian sport.
Yep.
He doesn't get the credit overseas for being a fantastic basketballer that he probably deserves. To succeed and be successful in that competition and play at the one team. And Dan, we can talk about San Antonio and the head coach Popovich and what he says about Paddy, but how long he's actually been there and been successful.
Mm.
Well, the women's game's no easier. Look at Shane Heal's daughter, lasted about as long as Mal Meninga's political career.
Yeah, and we've actually got a couple of girls playing in America at the moment who are flying along. So I understand why the request, but at the end of the day, it's probably not the place for it. And what will happen though, and hopefully, Judge, that this team does win a gold medal and Paddy's got the flag with him because that's exactly what Cathy Freeman did.
That's exactly right, and that because he's clearly a proud Indigenous fellow, and I think nothing would be better for him to have the flag and show it. And all this nonsense about was Cathy Freeman got, you can't do it, bugger off. That's now personal to him, and it's absolutely appropriate that he can fly the flag.
He could have a plan B and rip the main shirt off and have the T-shirt on, Djokovic style, perhaps, with the message on there.
Yeah, but there's a problem though, Paul.
Yeah.
I don't think Paddy Mills is the sort of guy that would like to get himself embroiled in controversy. No. I don't know him, but that's my impression of him. So I'd hate to see him become the issue about the Aboriginal flag and all the nonsense that it goes through. And by the way, if the government's serious about the Aboriginal flag and removing the copyright, it can take some action. Don't worry about that. It just chooses not to, and it chooses to take all the glory of the flag.
He's done an amazing work, Paddy Mills, and what a worthy person to be carrying our flag.
All right, Dan, I'm going to bring you back in here. Controversy of a sort during the week when Sha'Cari Richardson was ruled out of the Olympics due to testing positive for cannabis, suspended for 1 month, which will mean she'll miss all the races that she would have been entitled to compete in. What she says is that she'd self-medicated to cope with the death of her birth mother. She didn't break the law in the state that she was in because it allows the use of cannabis. Are the Olympics using an outdated rule?
You know, Mark, we chatted about this a little bit via email over the week. I mean, it is the rule, and she knows the rule, and you have to abide by the rules, whether it's the United States Olympic Committee or whether it's the International Olympic Committee. You know, I definitely understand the mental health issue and those type of things, but and definitely the United States is opening up marijuana all over the country. Every state seems to be opening up to legalization, whether it's CBD oil, smoking it or whatever, eating brownies, whatever you want to do over here. It seems like with the marijuana, but it is the rule. She knows the rule and she broke the rule. So it's just that's what the Olympics have to follow. To keep it safe and keep it fair for everybody, have those rules, regulations in place. And I understand her issue, but that is the policy.
Is it listed as performance enhancing? Because to me, you'd probably be happy to sit back and eat a pizza and watch them run past.
I'm sitting in drug court at the moment, Paul, and I asked the clinicians the other day the same question. And the general view is that cannabis is not performance enhancing. It can be in certain sports, such as pistol shooting and all the rest of it, because it just relaxes you. However, it's just a nonsense. It doesn't actually improve your performance. Dan, you have to agree that Richardson is a star. She's only 21. I suppose you'd say she's got plenty of time ahead of her, because I think most sprinters, improve with age. But she's the sixth fastest of all time, a mile behind Flojo, but that's another story from 1988.
Oh.
But I think you'd agree that she
wasn't on the grass.
She would have been a sensation at these Olympics. Her running and her looks. She's a fairly flamboyant sort of person.
That's the most difficult part of this, Judge. I mean, you literally, with the Olympics, it's only every 4 years. I mean, this is every 5. I mean, and then you're going to go 3. So it really is the opportunity to build your brand, to build those sponsorship opportunities. And that's the unfortunate thing of this, not only missing an opportunity to win gold, to represent your country, but you're going to miss a lot of sponsorship and endorsements as part of this.
At the NCAA Championships 2 years ago, as a 19-year-old, she set 2 world records in an hour. The 100 metres and 200 metres. She really is the real deal. And at one point, she was running the fastest of any woman's ever run the world in that 100 metre trial. So she's extraordinary.
But she would have significant opportunities for sponsorship with these companies now, I would have thought, Dan, if the legalisation of cannabis is so big. They'd be looking for a spokesperson, and Homer Simpson's not available, so possibly she would be.
Well, that's I don't know the Olympic policies, the USOC policies well enough, David, to know if they can have sponsors relative to what they would consider performance enhancing, or, I mean, obviously, as Judge said, I don't think cannabis is performance enhancing, but drugs that are considered illegal for competition purposes like this right now, I don't know if they would allow those type of sponsorships to happen. Now, the question is, again, obviously with the United States opening up the usage, and I mean, they're selling CBD oil and everything for muscle relaxants, pains, and those type of things. And I would think that you've heard a number of NFL and NBA players have spoken very openly about their use of marijuana, whether it's eating it or drinking or smoking it in that respect. So again, it's just the policies that are written the way they're written right now. She got caught up in that.
I think she'll be known as the smokesperson for cannabis.
Oh.
It's a nicer ring to it. There you go, smoke ring to it. 18 states have now legalised it, as well as DC, extraordinarily. So yeah, I think you're right, Dan, but I think the rule has got to be changed. It's not if it's not performance enhancing, which I understand it's not.
It's probably less dangerous than a lot of the painkillers that the athletes take to alleviate the pains and the things that they've got. It's probably less invasive and less dangerous.
Judge, did you say you're at drug court at the moment? Are you sure that you aren't confiscating any of the product to take at your place today? Because those 2 gags weren't your sharpest, I would have thought.
Oh dear. All right, we might go to you now, Paul. NRL round 17. You and I already did a show during the week about the Dragons and their off-field problems.
What happened? Has something happened, has it, Professor?
Yeah, we've already discussed it, Cooter.
Weekend at Pawnees, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's look at round 17. Manly 16, Canberra 30. Is it right? No Cherry Evans, no Tommy Turbo, no Manly.
Well, I tipped a Manly.
Wants to know.
Yeah, we were worried there was going to be too many one-sided matches, and I thought that would join the queue, but it didn't. Must show the importance of Cherry Evans and probably more importantly Turbo to Manly. So your man Schooner's turned into a shot glass, unfortunately. So Manly's momentum's been stalled. The Raiders were monster odds of winning that. We did have a massively one-sided game with the Rabbitohs absolutely toweling the Cowboys 46-18. The gap between the Rabbitohs and the other 2 teams at the top, Panthers and Storm, is closing fast. I'm not quite booking my Sydney flights for a grand final yet, but I'm getting very excited here. Why Brad Fittler didn't go with Cody Walker and Adam Reynolds is beyond me for Origin 3, but we'll talk about that shortly. Your dogs, Professor, who I gave them a big sniff at $9, they were that big an outsider. They came within AB's proverbial of beating the Roosters, who were sure missing a few players, but nothing went right for the dogs. They've almost pulled off that miracle for you, Professor.
Lachlan Lewis with a double. Is he one of the better finds for the Bulldogs?
Well, he's going to be good next year because you've just signed Matt Duffy, one of our favourites. And I think what might have happened is one of the Dogs' recruiters might have been watching him run from Vorney's party because he ran 5 kilometres home, and that could have been at Olympic pace, my scouts tell me. So that might have been enough for them to sign him up. He's going to be your number 1 next year. I hope you get Brandon Smith from the Storm to be your number 9. You've got a pretty decent winger, Josh Addo-Carr, coming in as well, and a very fine number 6, Matt Burton. So things are looking up at the Dogs there for you, Professor.
Paul,
but we do have to talk. We do have to talk about the off-field debacle. I'll get to it. Jai Arrow, on the back of the Paul Vaughan debacle, has invited a dancer, if you don't mind, into his bubble. Excuse the pun, in the Queensland camp. Now, he says there was no physical contact, so I don't know if Jai is trying out for a gig as a judge on Dancing with the Stars, but he's got a dancer, I think, of the exotic variety into his room. That's broken all sorts of protocols, bubbles, biosecurity rules. I hope that he enjoyed the dancing because it's cost him $35,000, a 2-week ban, and I doubt you'll be seeing Jai Arrow next year for the Queensland team, and an appropriate surname now, man, Arrow, because his ex-girlfriend now, certainly ex-former Miss Australia's fired an arrow straight into his head on social media. So what a moronic decision, and the NRL is absolutely furious about this on the back of this debacle about Molitalo, Ronaldo, the non-coke dodging Ronaldo, when they couldn't work out their own eligibility rules. And they've now got a player inviting a dancer into the room. Now, there's some pretty saucy gossip going around. There might have been more than just Jai in the room watching the dancing exhibition. Now, if that's true, that has the potential to derail not only Origin, which has been moved to the Gold Coast from Newcastle, but the entire competition.
Paul, I knew that there was an IQ test for players in the NRL, but what I didn't know is that you had to, in fact, fail the test in order to play NRL. And I've got to say, this comes up year after year where the game is, as you have pointed out to us, swimming along beautifully, and the players just come along and stuff the whole caravan up by their ridiculous antics. I don't know the question. Is the question, is it ever going to change? Because it's a perennial problem with NRL.
Well, it's the bad eggs, but on the back of the Paul Vaughan, you couldn't pick up any publication without that being all over it. So how you would be that stupid to try and smuggle a dancer into your room, it is beyond me. And it's taken the gloss off what I think will be a very close Origin game. I think that Brad Fittler's erred in picking Jack Whiten, who's horribly out of form at number 6. And he's paired him with Mitchell Moses. And we discussed it on the show. We haven't seen a bigger hook since that Robin Williams Peter Pan movie, that kick at goal that he had. So I think Mitchell Moses has a bit of the flat track bully about him. And I think that New South Wales might be found out in this game. And it might not surprise you, the Queenslanders are $3.50. I think they should be shorter. They're getting Ponga back. AJ Brimston is a freak of a player on the emergency bench. Munster and Cherry Evans. Munster can't play that bad for 3 games straight in Origin. I think Queensland will go very close to winning this Origin. We'll see.
What do you think the final score will be?
16-10 to New South Wales. I think, it'll be very, very close. There might just be a bit much class in New South Wales. But as you know, Professor, when you start mucking around with your 6s and 7s, albeit through injury, when Queensland has not only a settled team, but they're getting in Ponga back, who's in outstanding form, I think Queensland will really make a game of it. So I'm looking forward to it. Wednesday night it is. One to look forward to for the sports fans, but there won't be a Jai Arrow out there, I can tell you that much.
Paul, you mentioned before about South Sydney playing North Queensland the other night. You hate to talk about the refereeing or the the box or whatever they call it, the bunker. But how was one bloke given 10 minutes in the sin bin, and then a bloke about a minute before not given 10 minutes, and it changed the complex of the game? It's still a blight on the game that the inconsistency around the head exists.
It certainly did change the game, and unfortunately, the way the rules are now, if you're an underdog and that happens to you, you just can't overcome it. And it was the head scratcher of a decision. But I can tell you who's happy that Wayne Bennett's pretty happy that the Rabbitohs 6 and 7 weren't picked for Origin, because they're playing out of their skin. But I do agree with you that was a head scratcher, and they either both should have gone or neither should have gone.
It's become a real like, if we're saying the head is you can't touch it, then both should have gone. But what it's doing is, and there's a lot of discussion at the moment, Paul, and we talked about last week, is the one-sidedness of the competition and the top three. I don't think Parramatta are quite in that top four. But we've never seen anything like what the Storm's dishing up at the moment around results. But yeah, I think it'll happen in the off season. They'll look and adjust what happens going forward. But the change to the fact of getting in the head gets 10 minutes, I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, they need to work on that and get the consistency. We are seeing the haves and have-nots, and there's only 3 teams that can win it: the Storm, Panthers, and Rabbitohs. And the Panthers' injuries have brought them back to the pack. So we've got one more game on, Professor, today: the Sharks and the Warriors. It's a mixed bag, this one. Throw a coin in the air and you tell me what it is, because Sean Moylan's out for the Sharks. Reece Walsh is one to watch for the Warriors, a freakish player at number 1. I think it'll be a close game. I'm actually tipping a Warriors upset at $2.50 for the punters. So I think they might just get there, but they're unpredictable of the extreme, the Warriors. You just pretty much like Freo in the AFL. You don't know what you're going to get.
And the final score?
I think 24-20. It'll be quite a good game, which I'd watch if I didn't have the 3 kids. I think it'd be a good game today.
Paul, and the last thing on the league is that the rumours around a 10-year deal by the Broncos for Payne Haas. They've got to have had a bit of the magic cookies, haven't they, surely?
Well, that sounds insane to me. I mean, there's been some massive money paid. Look at your Jason Tomalolo's on similar sort of deal, and he's just not producing enough for the Cowboys. I wouldn't be throwing that sort of money at a big player. Maybe as a playmaker, you might want to do that, but you'd want someone who's a superstar. He's good, but he's not that good. The Broncos are getting Adam Reynolds. They need to get a bit more than that. Otherwise, it's going to be a pretty fruitless couple of years for Adam Reynolds there.
Paul, the trivia question for years to come will be, no doubt, when were all 3 games played in Queensland, the State of Origin games?
That's a very good question. And if we were to win all 3 in Queensland, it'd be very sweet indeed. But the actual rugby league fan of me is speaking louder than the colour of my shirt. I do want a close match, actually, just for the series. I don't want to whitewash.
Can I also ask why the need for a third in light of COVID situation, etc., needs to be played, being a dead rubber? Is it just purely a financial, monetary
Not at
reasoning?
all. You watch how much passion is shown by the Queenslanders, and you tell me whether anything's dead about that game. So I get this every year, this dead rubber question. What it is, Queensland will want to go on to the next series next year as winners. If you subscribe in any way to the only as good as your last game, particularly after the first 2 were such demolitions, you'll find that there'll be nothing dead about Wednesday night match. I can assure you.
I'm also saying that the current COVID situation, was it really necessary to have the match played at all?
Well, as you're saying, you should have cancelled it. Well, there's a lot of commercial considerations, but also too, the players are very keen, and you've got not much else to do in lockdown. Most of the country, the ratings will be through the roof, even though it's been such a demolition job the first 2. So there's a lot of interest in this, not just those concerns.
Well, it obviously didn't mean much to Jai Arrow because he's running a pole dancing session. So,
well, he just loves his dancing. That's all. And Paul Vaughan loves the barbecue, obviously, $1 million barbecue. So some of these players just need a good hard look at themselves.
But he's not a bad person, though, Paul Vaughan. So don't say anything bad about him.
He's a decent guy who hosted an absolutely ludicrous event, knowing the rules. So unfortunately for him, I hope he rebounds and learns a lot from it, because he does have a young family, and it is a pretty tough decision, particularly when Jack de Belin maintains his contract.
Paul, just getting back onto the actual playing side of just for a second. You spoke earlier with respect to the Bulldogs picking up Alcott and Dufty for next season. Well, that's 29 tries that are going to go straight into that side.
It is, and they're going to be fed by a very good number 6 in Burton. And if you can keep Lachlan Lewis playing the way he is, you're going to have a good team. And if, as I said, if you can get Brandon Smith, who remains unsigned at the Storm, as your 9, that would be exceptional.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for today. Much appreciated for your input as always. Make sure, Paul, that you get onto the Gravitas website to get your Gravitas glory, because we want everybody to be able to smash them down.
Yep, I'll get on there. And you recommend it 6, Professor, or can I afford a case? Or
I'll go for a case, Paul, given your lifestyle.
Does it come with a night? Does it come with a night light as well?
Mark, I'm worried about all these geeks taking their slabs down to the basement. They just might fall over on their way down. They're not very strong, these guys, these athletes. So I'm just really concerned. I've got this vision of them just toppling straight head first with their Gravitas beer down their basement cellars.
Well,
where they live.
Then maybe each case should come with a safety rail.
Well, maybe on the next show, Judge, we'll have to have the spokesperson discuss that. So.
Don't you take my good lines there.
That's the next product he'll sponsor, Shorty, is a bit of the green stuff, and he'll be come on with a reggae backdrop.
I tell you what, Judge, that clip will certainly make the highlight reel. There's no doubt about that.
Well, in Cooner's words, the low light reel.
Just quickly before we go, Judge, tell us about your enigmatic Saints, which we've been looking at over the last few weeks. They pulled off a big one in Queensland.
I know you like a good long-term bet, but they're looking good for. I'm not really sure they're looking good for, but I certainly think they're in finals contention now. Incredibly, 3 weeks ago you wouldn't have said this, but yeah, they're an amazing side. I mean, amazingly difficult to predict.
Might be like the New Zealand Warriors, Paul.
Well, that's the thing. It's when they all click, they're pretty good to watch, the Saints. I tell you, there's a bit of everything there for everyone. So it's the momentum's a powerful force, particularly at this time of a football season. So could they do a Western Bulldogs from a few years back?
Well, exactly what I'm thinking. They did a very similar story back in 2016, if it was. Yeah.
Or tennis terms, they've got to beat a team on top. They'll be the one that no one wants to play. There's always a player in the locker room that no one wants to play. Saints could be that sort of team now.
Mm.
All right,
they're going to have to beat a very good team to get there, one would have thought.
Oh, right.
All right, gentlemen. Thanks very much for your contributions. And until next Sunday,